I'm Michael Magid, live very early in the morning for me in Hollywood, California. With me, also taking a sip of water, is 99 World Cup winner Saskia Webber, who's been sequestered in a corner now. No library motif going on with her as she shakes her head. And joining us, unfortunately, no Omar Zeenni today. I think he's actually out camping, enjoying the world. Like a lot of people are out there, being an independent human being. And speaking of being an independent human being, that leads us to our guest today, because we're going to be talking about the little guys and empowering those little guys out there, those youngers out there. We've got U16 England national team goalkeeper coach Terry Mason. Terry, what is up with you?
Well, it's easy for me. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. So even though I have got a cup of tea, very English of me, yeah, it's not as bad as what it is for you guys being obviously so early, but yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, dude, anything, honestly, for you and the FA, anything, honestly, like whenever the FA, honestly, whenever the FA sends us somebody, we'll jump, because we haven't had one person from the FA who were like, ugh, what are they doing over there? Like, no, it's literally, and I know this sounds like this like Euro snobbery where like Americans just feel like we're insignificant, and, you know, in comparison to you guys. But honestly, you guys do a really good job over at the FA with goalkeeping development, especially at the youth levels. So why don't you kind of, for our audience who might not be familiar with your role at the FA and what you do with England, you kind of break it down.
Yeah, so my role at the FA is on the men's side with the under 16 age group. So that consists of me personally as a consultant 90 days a year. So it'll be on camp. It'll be me going out and watching the goalkeepers that are going to be involved in squads. So predominantly it's that under 16 age group, but also working, I'm not sure if you're aware of what we do at the FA, but we also have goalkeeping camps. So we have 3 or 4 camps throughout the season where we'll have the under 15, 16, 17s, all the way up to the under 20s, all coming together and train together. So yeah, I play a part in that as well. I've done quite a few of those in the past, which are great, really, really good. It's something that Tim Dittmer introduced, and I think they were even doing them before Tim came to the FA. But they've been super successful, and yeah, so I've played a part in that. But predominantly, my role is to look after the under 16s.
Dude, that is awesome, man. I mean, honestly, like
Yeah.
I didn't know that you guys did those goalkeeper camps and brought all those groups together. I really hope the U.S. Soccer Federation is listening, because I think that's a fantastic idea to do that. I mean, Saskia always talks about the fact that we need to have a little bit more, you know, interaction between the senior levels, the higher levels, and the younger levels, so that they have, you know, kind of an understanding of what the demands are at those ages, and also just an introduction into those players, so they're not kind of just thrown into this pool. And then all of a sudden, like, you've got, you know, a really promising 17s training with the 21s, and they've never met these people before.
Yeah, it's also to kind of get used to the level and the training, what's expected of them, you know, for these, like, to achieve what they want to achieve. You know, the youngers have to understand, you know, how hard they need to train when they're not with the national team, when they're not, you know, at a certain level and everything, what it takes to get there. Instead of, we talked about this the other week, instead of that, like, assumption that your kid or somebody's like, wow, they could be starting from brand new in like 2 years or something, you know, like, it's, you know, get kind of sorry, it's still early, get kind of a perspective on where you are, your skills are, but what is expected of you and how hard you need to train.
Yeah. Don't worry, Saskia. We'll let Terry just completely lead this whole thing, because he's the one that's awake right now.
No, they as I said, they've been really good, and exactly what you're saying there. It's, you know, the under 15 goalkeepers that, you know, the 14 years old are spending 4 or 5 days with the under 20s keepers who are full-time at their clubs, are professionals at their clubs. And it's great, because they kind of can look at those keepers and think, well, that's where I want to get to. That's where I want to be in 3 or 4 years' time. And then what Tim's done really well as well is he's got a senior goalkeeper to come in as well. So I think it was the last camp before lockdown, Jack Butland came in, and he spent the evening with all the keepers and told his story and how he came through the England system. And That's obviously really inspiring for the keepers. But I think one of the main things when you're bringing through young goalkeepers, I don't know what your thoughts are, Saskia, on this, is you've got to show them the pathway. And if you're 14 years old and you come in and you think, wow, I want to be that in 3 or 4 years' time, well, you're actually spending time with that person. You're learning off that person. And as I said, I think they're brilliant, really, really good.
No, absolutely. You do have to show them the pathway, because there's so many different ways to go here in the United States, and you're not really sure like who to follow, what to listen to. And so I think that, put them on course early, understand what they have to do to get to where they want to be, and have people to look up to at the same time,
Yeah.
Yeah. We just had we just had a question come into the comments section.
Somebody else is awake?
Yeah, somebody else is awake. This is Charlie Hobbs, and this is actually going to kind of lead into our topic right now, because we're going to be talking kind of about the different profiles of the younger goalkeepers. But Charlie asks you, Terry, he says, what are the main attributes that England coaches look for in keepers?
Yeah, I actually know Charlie Hobbs. So hi, Charlie.
Okay.
You're right. If it's the same Charlie Hobbs, he plays for Leicester City Academy. What do they look for? I think one of the main things, and it's been the way for kind of the last 10 years now, is it used to be out of possession. You had to be really, really good. You had to be able to make saves. You had to be able to defend the area, defend the space. But now that's almost not enough. You have to be brilliant in possession as well. So to answer Charlie's question, and me and Charlie have spoken about this in the past. You have to be just as good in possession as what you are out of possession.
Yeah. I mean, I think you brought up a really good point right there, because that's something that, moving into our topic right here is so important, is actually teaching those youngers how to play with the ball as well too. And I love the fact that, both Saskia and I actually watched some of your sessions yesterday. The fact that you're able to integrate the shot stopping with the possession play and still keep it fun at these younger ages is so important. So Terry, kind of in your own words, kind of what is the profile of a younger's goalkeeper generally?
At the FA at England, we use something at the FA called nerve strength. It's something we look for at a really young age. That are they able to express themselves in what to them is a really precious situation of being selected for the national team. So the psychological skills of, being able to go in at a goalkeeping camp or go in with an age group and really be able to express themselves is definitely something we look for. It might come later to certain goalkeepers. So goalkeepers that might not have that at a young age, of course, are going to be monitored in the system. But in order to play at St. George's Park against Spain and really have the nerve strength and the confidence to express yourself is something we definitely look for at a young age. And then going back to what I said then, it used to be, back in the day, as long as out of possession, your game was excellent. You could be successful at the national level probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but now you simply can't be. The way the teams play, the way the goalkeepers are so involved in the team, you have to be just as good, as I said, in possession. So the psychological strength, even at a young age, the ability to be super effective out of possession, and then a part of the team in possession is definitely the three fundamentals that we look for.
It's really good that you said that, because Saskia is a huge proponent of this. She talks about the fact that she loves her goalkeepers being active in rondos with the team as much as possible, because not only does it teach them the confidence, but it also instills the confidence in the field players to play with the goalkeeper. And especially at the younger ages, there's a lot of stigma by the field players into playing that ball back to them. They're worried about what's going to happen if they give the ball back to the goalkeeper.
Yeah. Well, no, sorry, Saskia, you go.
No, yeah, you have to be confident too. Your team, everybody, but it just builds confidence across the board, whether it's in your coaching, moving forward, everything. But like we've always said, goalkeepers they're such a part of the play and the game. I always say, like, there's first pass on attack.
Exactly.
So So if you don't have that ability and that confidence, you're going to get left behind at this point.
Yeah.
No,
But I think the only way you can have that is by practicing and being a part of the team, and the practices that we design, you're really testing them constantly as well. So I think we have a huge responsibility to, yes, involve them in the team, being a part of the team, a part of the squad, but also making sure that when we do work in isolation, that the sessions are A, game realistic, and B, fit in the demands of the modern game. And I do call it the modern game because the goalkeeping position has changed so much in the last 20 years where, you'd probably be, no disrespect to you, Saskia, because I know you played in the 90s, but, if you were great out of possession, you could probably be, play at the highest level. But if for me, you can't now, especially if you want to play a certain style.
And she's not taking.
I'm just no taking, but I always felt that we played through the keeper a lot for us in the late 90s with the 99 team and stuff like that. Anyway, like it was something that we did as a U.S. team, not as much as it is now, but it wasn't. It was. I guess we were ahead of our time.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you've even talked about, and we've actually talked about. Just the simple fact is that, when you're working with the youngers, you want to instill these good habits in general in the first place. So let's talk about that, because one of the things that's been really fascinating to us, and it's a question that we've been getting a lot from a lot of younger goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches that work with that transitional age, is this transition from the youngers to the full game. And obviously through the pathway, Terry, you see this a lot. So can you kind of break down what are kind of the demands in the youngers, like 9v9, small sided game, that shifts as they head into the 11v11 game?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest things is your involvement in the game. If you watch the 9s, 10s, and 11s, you're constantly involved, whether it's making saves, making decisions, playing out from the back, whatever it might be, you're constantly involved. I think the bigger the game gets, I think that's where the concentration levels can come into it more and more. Because you might go, especially if you're playing for the England national team, where you can go, if you're playing against a smaller nation, you can perhaps go, 10, 15, 20 minutes without touching the ball, where at the younger age groups, you're constantly involved. So, I think that's probably, for me, the biggest difference.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a really, really good point. Saskia and I, we've actually spoken about this a lot, I mean, I remember when I was a little guy and I first went on that full-size field, I might have been playing in an airport. I mean, it was massive. And the ball looks so far away. You're like, how long is it going to take for that ball to get to me? And so because the game opens up like that, understanding how to organize and, how to stay relatively connected with your team becomes so much more important. And then I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like this is when you start introducing, channel service, and there's actual flank play coming in that you don't really get in the 9v9 game, which is a more direct game, right?
Yeah. I think that, we're talking about it today and talking about the transition between the youngers to the older age groups. And I think it's not just games in isolation. I think your practices have to reflect the challenges they're about to face.
Yeah.
And the challenges they are facing. It is common sense, really. If a goalkeeper's going into his under 14 age group and it's his first year in full-size goals on a full-size pitch, make sure your practices leading up to that season are a reflection of what they're about to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty common sense, really. It's pretty straightforward, because otherwise your decisions in a small-sided game or in a slightly bigger game are going to be completely different to a full-size pitch and a full-size goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, one thing I've seen, and Saskia, I don't know if you've seen this as well too, and I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but one of the issues we have in the United States is that at our younger ages, they throw too many goalkeepers at the goalkeeper coach. They say, every 9-year-old wants to try goalkeeper, so why don't you send 30 kids, to the goalkeeper coach and have them all hang out right there. In your guys' opinion over at the FA, what is kind of like that proper ratio between goalkeeper and goalkeeper coach, at those 9s, 10s, 11s?
For me, really quick, I think the bigger issue is those coaches constantly trying to find a goalkeeper here. So it's like, I might have with club, I might have a bunch of younger goalkeepers I've had for like a year or 2 years that are advanced in their training. Next thing I know, I got 3 little kids walking over to throw in with the same group in the time period that I have. And it's just like, I gotta, you want me to assess these kids that have never played goalkeeper before and teach them, try to teach them how to catch, basically, to these kids that are like advanced. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, coaches, it's, we have to have a discussion. It's like, somebody's going to lose out in this situation, because I have to spend time focusing here. You can't just say, hey, Tommy and Susie, go walk over and join Saskia. Hey, Saskia, they said they want to try goalkeeper today. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a session.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all been there before.
Go.
Is that something that happens over there, like with Southend? When you're working with the youngers, like does that happen?
Not so much, because if you're working at so Southend is a professional club. It's seen as the elite level. It's not Cat 1. So briefly for people that aren't aware, in England we have Cat 1 academies, which are your top academies. So that'd be your Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham. And then you have the next tier down, Cat 2, Cat 3 and Cat 4. Southend are a Cat 3 club, but it's still seen as an elite level club. So you'll have goalkeepers that are signed to the football club and are of an elite level. And I think the big challenge there is, working closely with the scouts. So they're not sending in 5 goalkeepers in a particular age group at the same time. And also they're fitting the profile of what we're looking for. So I think if that situation happens, something has gone wrong previous to that situation coming up. So if that was to happen, the first thing I would do is look at myself and say, well, actually, my communication probably hasn't been good enough with the scouts or with the head of the academy to say, look, how can we manage this better? Because I think it's fine to have, 1 or 2 trialists in a group. Yeah. But again, they've got to be of the there or thereabouts level. Otherwise, like you said, our job is also to adapt and to make sure we're testing all the abilities within the group. But, ultimately they're there to become professional footballers. So the level needs to be a very high standard. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question for you, Terry. We talked about this actually a couple weeks ago. We had a young man in a Q&A show that we did, a live quote unquote show with a goalkeeper camp in the United States, as live as you can be right now with these with travel. And he was asking about his progression into the full size goal, and you could kind of see his eyes kind of go like, that thing is huge. Like, what do I do in this thing? So what are kind of like the variables other than, obviously size is going to be a huge one when a goalkeeper first moves into the full size goal that kind of come into play, and that when you first start working with the youngers that moves into that full size goal that you look at and say, okay, these are the first 3 things that we kind of need to work on.
Well, the first thing you need to speak to them and say, listen, this is going to be a challenge. This isn't going to be straightforward, because you're now going into a goal that is not going to get any bigger, so you're going to get bigger, but the goal isn't now. So technically it should become easier as you get older. But just sort of saying to them, look, you are going to get beat at times. That's just the nature of the situation you're in, but be patient with yourself. It's important the staff are patient with you, and we'll support you, and just giving them time, really, especially for the late developers. I think that's key, really, for the physical late maturers. If they're going into under 14 season into a full size goal, but their maturation might be that they're a year behind, you might, as a football club, have to look at that and manage that with the parents, manage that with the academy manager. But yeah, I just think setting the expectation, really, it is going to take time for you to adjust to defending this size goal. And also, as we've said before, about the different decisions you have to make in the different dimensions that are obviously a lot bigger than a smaller pitch. So I would say patience, just patience.
I think you brought up a really good point. You know, Saskia, the one thing that you were saying is that you wanted a lot of goalkeeper coaches out there to understand that they need to have discussions with their team coaches in regards to the tactics that a lot of other coaches are going to be utilizing at that time period. You're talking about the later maturation, goalkeepers, Terry, where they're just going to start from a tactical standpoint, just starting to hit that ball, just to, in order to try to score goals. I don't know if you know this, Terry. There's some youth coaches out there that are very competitive and apparently want to win games.
No, that's all. And we talked with the Bulls, with the LA club I'm with the Bulls. We talk to our kids about it. Like, we let them know. And our focus is to teach them quality football. Sorry, it's quality football. I don't want them to say soccer when I'm talking to an Englishman.
No, it's fine.
No, it's okay. And let the parents and the kids understand. Like, we get it. We get up against those squads that it's like, boot it, kick it high, little Johnny's 5 feet tall, or whatever, and great, but at the end of the day, like, as long as you like have a handle on that and you explain to the kids, like, we're working on your positioning. We get that the goal's too big for you. We get it, but we also understand that's not what we're focusing on right now. We'll work on our positioning. You'll grow. It'll happen, right? But let's get the other aspects of the game down. Yeah. Love those like 8 to 5 games.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens in England, but it happens here all the time.
We're all over the place over here.
No. It's the easy thing to do is just recruit really tall goalkeepers that have got a longer reach that can defend the goal, but ultimately you've got to keep looking at the end game, which is obviously bringing them through to become scholarship players and professionals. So, it is about the long game. To be honest with you, it's such a massive difference here in the United States, and I'm sure you know that. With club, we just don't have that like if you're with a third division club there, but it's still a quality club team that people want to be pro footballers. They kind of have it in mind at 12 years old. I want to be a goalkeeper. I want to be this. I want to be that. Like, we here, it's just not to that level here. Although we get quality goalkeeping, it is like, take this. It's who you get that decides they will play goalkeeper sometimes, turn them into a goalkeeper. And so, a lot of my job has been taking that field player that will play goalkeeper sometimes as well, that's a good athlete, and turning them into a goalkeeper, as opposed to somebody who just says, I want to be a goalkeeper. This is what I want to do. Especially at that age, I wish. Yeah, but I think that's healthy as well, because I think sometimes they can decide they want to be a goalkeeper too soon, and then the trade-off to that is, they're perhaps not playing out on pitch and developing their football skills as well as what they could. They're not trying other sports, they're getting pigeonholed too soon. So
no, I agree, and you know how I feel about that, Mike. Like, I played on the field through high school, and I played multiple sports, so I love it, but it's just, it's interesting. It's interesting here.
Yeah. I'm sure.
I want to talk about this. I mean, and we can go, Terry, we could go off for an hour about just in regards to because this country is so massive. There's so many different development levels. And I don't know if been following what's going on here in our development stage, but the U.S. Federation had the Development Academy. They dissolved it. It's now MLS has taken it over. And they brought a lot of the indie clubs as well too. But then there's also a rival league called the ECNL. So it's all over the map here. And that's a whole, and then rec is even another level. So it's a little crazy. But I want to talk about more from the development standpoint. I want to talk about when you move into that full size goal, right? I've noticed this personally when I've started working with younger keepers. They'll start cheating in certain ways because kids are competitive and they don't want to get scored on, and they don't have the range. They don't have the range to cover the entire area. So how do you develop proper habits with goalkeepers so they don't start cheating, but they start understanding the actual dimensions and playing it like they would once they start growing?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and I think that has to be really skillfully managed. So at the FA, we've got a really clear way and a clear style that we want the goalkeepers to play. So, for example, when the team are out of possession and say the ball's on the halfway line, as a goalkeeper, you've got a big responsibility to defend the space between the back four or the back five, and that space between that and your goal. So it is easy for a smaller keeper to naturally retreat and defend the goal because they're worried about the shot from distance. But then the trade-off is they're not dealing with that space in behind the back four or the back five. So I think it's sitting down with them and saying, look, yes, obviously you want to defend your goal, but at the same time, you've got a responsibility for the team because we want to press high. So our back four have got to be high, that you've got to be high in order to defend the space. So it's explaining that to them. It's seeing it happen. And it's saying, look, you've got that responsibility as well. So if you get beat from distance and it lands underneath the bar, I'll back you, and that's going to change as you get bigger and stronger. But it's not just about defending the goal.
I mean, that's
no, absolutely.
Go ahead,
No, absolutely same opinion.
Yeah.
And it is tying them in. It is getting out of that 99 thought process and just being like, you have to come up, support your team. You have to be an option for them. And you see the kids that they want to hang back there. They're like, now they've got this huge goal they're in, and they're worried about it and they want to hang back there. But it's explaining the concept and the process of what you're doing now. And that now you're trying to shut down stuff sooner, trying to communicate with your team so the press, so you can slowly back up if you have to and everything. But if they get that concept, then they'll understand and they'll tie into that back line. So
Terry, do you do a lot of training with them in higher areas so that they get comfortable being outside of the goal?
Yeah, so they tend to get that within the squad, and I'll obviously be supporting the head coach within that. I think sometimes it's difficult to recreate that if you've got maybe one or two keepers. You can do it, but I'm a really big believer in every session should be a game-related practice. If you can't take a screenshot and a picture of your session and say, this is how it relates to the 11v11 game, well, then don't do it. I'm really strong on that. So if you are going to design a practice and make it realistic, it's sometimes more difficult with one or two keepers. You can do it, but I think that's where you can work with the head coach, with the squad, and speak to the keeper as the session's going on or in the drinks break and say, look, this is your responsibility now. And I think the good thing about the FA, since Tim's got there and designed the goalkeeping DNA, it's very clear on how we want them to play. So there are always going to be slight variations because of their profile as a keeper, but they have a huge responsibility to play high out of possession and play high in possession as well and be connected to the team. So yeah, to do those type and work on those type of things within the squad is the perfect situation, really, because it's game realistic.
Yeah. I want to ask this because this is something I'm not familiar with, and I don't know what your guys' theory is right here. But you were talking about maybe a goalkeeper that hasn't physically matured, but they have the DNA that you're looking for. And let's say we're talking more at the club level than at the national team, international level. Do you ever hold them back and keep them in the small-sided game because that they've got certain qualities, but they're not ready physically for the demands of the full size game?
Yeah, you can do. I think if you're going to, you've got to have a good reason to do it, because I think that can really impact the social side. And they're young boys. If young boys are held back to a younger age group, the knock-on effect can be. It's got to be handled in a delicate way. So if you sit down and you believe that these are the benefits of this keeper, maybe every other week, once a month, playing down in a smaller pitch in order to be effective, and we're going to be patient with their maturity and we can feed them back into the 11-a-side game, then I think you need to explain it to the parents, you need to explain it to the keeper, you need to explain it to the coaches, and everybody needs to be on the same page. Because if you start saying, okay, listen, we're going to keep you down this week because you might be more effective in that game, and it's going to help your confidence because you'll probably be more effective, therefore more confident. I think it's a very delicate one that you've really got to handle with care.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the social aspect of that, and you're absolutely right. If I was 12 years old and they're like, "Hey, Mike, you know those you know those fifth graders? Want to hang out with those fifth graders for
Yeah, big deal.
No, that's a huge deal. Saskia, I want to ask you this because obviously
Hold on, I
you're
lost
involved.
you guys.
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
Can you hear?
now I can. Okay.
Okay. I want to ask you this because you're obviously involved in the club scene here in the United States as well as at the high level collegiate, and now with the professional level too as a co-owner, Miss Executive here.
I'm a very busy person.
Yes.
That's why I was still in bed at 8 a.m.
By the way, I love the lighting you got going on.
I'm working on it. I've been relegated in my corner. I was like, didn't you see me sitting here playing with it? I was like, I gotta figure it out, man. Can't put me in a corner. I'm so upset about this.
Goalkeeper nightclub going on here. No, I want you.
I have a disco light. I gotta bust that out.
Oh, if you had like a strobe light going on, that'd be awesome.
I do. I have like a multicolored disco light.
I want to ask you because I want a lot of the parents out there who might be listening, and the goalkeeper coaches out there who might be listening, in the United States to kind of hear from you how important that communication is by the coaches with the parents at that younger age group. How massively important it is that they're on the same page.
Well, it's not kind of funny because I'm sitting here going like, you have that problem in England. I just thought they gave you the kids and they shut up, make my kid a professional, and they're not even allowed on the grounds. That's what I was like. No, it's incredibly important because it is a social issue, and you have to think about it. It absolutely is. It's you have kids, and I still deal with it even as the kids get older. I have kids that have left the club because their teammates from their friends from school went to another club, and so they want to stick with their friends. And parents don't understand like why, little Terry. I always use the name of the guest. Why little Terry has been like relegated down to the youngers to build like it. You have to have the communication, and they have to understand. Look, number one, they should trust you and put their kids in your hands and trust you and leave you alone, which would be the greatest idea of anything. But with that being said, I think the more important thing is to have the communication with the keeper, because if the keeper gets it and understands, it'll filter up to the parents in a sense. Like they'll be like, Mom and Dad, leave me alone. Like, I get it. You can have a conversation with the parents as well. But if they understand they're not being punished, they understand that it is a part of training and it's a part of learning to get to where they want to be.
Yeah.
But parents are a nightmare. Like we all know it. Like, so.
Is there what is the parent situation like, Terry, at in the UK? Is it because culturally there's more of an understanding that a player is left alone to develop at an academy, or is there still sometimes conflicts?
I think it depends on what club you're at. I think it's not just in England we're like this. I think some clubs open the doors to the parents. Some like to keep them at distance. Personally, I think if you're working with a boy from potentially 8 years old to 18, 19, 20 years old, I think you need to have a relationship with the parents. And
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think parents appreciate that as well. If you say, listen, I want to involve you on this. This is what our thought process is. We're obviously all busy people, but I think you need to build that into the culture of your club to say, look, we've almost got a responsibility because they're going to spend more time with the parents than they are with you. So if the parents are understanding what your thought process is on a certain situation, the parents are, if you have a conversation with them and you get buy-in from them, it just makes everything easier. And, sometimes parents in the past will come to you and say, well, what's going on? And you sit down and explain it to them. They go, oh, if only I'd known that. I didn't realize that was how you were thinking about this situation. But, you can't involve them in absolutely everything. I mean, there has to be, like you say there, you have to have that relationship and that respect with the player first and foremost. But I think if you don't involve the parent, you're only going to cause yourself more problems.
I think that you find by, especially at age 8 and moving forward, for being with the kids that I've been with for that long, oh God, I'm old. With the thing, I find that the parents leave me more alone because you gain their trust more. Like you have that relationship. So if there is a major question, if there is a major situation, we'll talk about it. But other than that, listen to Coach Saskia. You've been with her forever. Just listen to her. And I find that with that, gives me more latitude to do what I need to do.
But my concern here is and I'm playing devil's advocate right here because yeah, Terry, we have been talking about developing autonomy and independence as a goalkeeper and fending for yourself type of a thing. Is how now does listen to Coach Saskia, but also Coach Saskia is going to be teaching you how to think independently, So let's kind of talk about that, because I think one of the things that Saskia and I really loved about your sessions is the way you communicate with these youngers, the way that you actually give them the freedom and empower them to actually communicate with you. And, and you give them, you don't have them parrot back to you what you just, said to them. You have them think about why they're doing something, and they understand the reasoning behind it. So kind of, why don't you talk about the communication process at that age?
Yeah. So, I mean, like you've used the word there, empower them. And I think when you tend to watch goalkeeping practices, goalkeeping coaches work, it's really easy as an adult to be the only voice there because you've got the answers, you've got the experience. But for me, in order to really empower the kids and get them thinking more and get them used to voicing their opinion and get them used to having the ownership around their own game, I think you have to try and create an environment and create areas of your session where you're asking them the right questions, but then allowing them to express their thoughts and feelings on what's going on within this practice. And I think that leads, I think, to being a more independent thinker, being more opinionated, because they need to have that throughout their development. If they're going to go from 8s to 18s at a club, their opinion matters. So encouraging that at a young age and creating an environment to say, look, come on, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? What did you do well there? What could you do even better? And constantly kind of creating that environment. I think that empowers them and works well.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way about that. Like, absolutely. I'm like, those are my answers in the morning. I agree.
Saskia's much more opinionated and eloquent mid-afternoon.
I think like everybody's like, maybe you should, the goalkeeper union's like, maybe you should always have Saskia on first thing in the morning. She's very agreeable.
Look,
trying to figure out my purple light right now. I don't know what's going on.
The funny thing is, Terry, is that like Tim's like, he's like, hey, make sure that you allow Terry, time to elaborate his answers and everything like that. And I'm like, all right, perfect. We'll do it at 8 a.m. That way, Terry will talk the entire time. We'll just sit here and listen the entire time. By the way, shout out to the Sevilles, Henry Seville and Michael Seville. They want to give you a little shout out there, Terry. They're watching.
Hi
right
guys,
now,
how are you? See you in a few weeks' time. Well, next week, I think. Yeah, is it next week? Yeah, we're doing a session next week. So yeah, see you then.
Top GK coach with the little hand thing going on like that. So that's when you're legit, when you're getting the emojis. That's when you're.
Yeah, just don't read out the bad ones, please, Michael.
Let's talk about the communication, because one thing that I think is a little concerning sometimes is coaches get frustrated when the goalkeeper's not giving the quote unquote right answer, or they don't know how to lead them down the right path. Terry, how much of a leash do we have to give them, and how much do we need to allow them to fail before we give them the answer?
Yeah, it's difficult question to answer, really, because it can be different with certain individuals, different at certain times of the season. I think, again, it goes back to creating the environment where it isn't a test. I'm not saying, right, come on, I'm asking you this question and you've got to know the answer. It's more kind of creating a conversation. And I did a course about 6 months ago, and it was a guy from Leicester City, and he was saying, when you plan a practice, how often do you plan your interventions? And everyone was like, wow, and I've not really thought about that. But you have to allow time for that. You know, there is this big thing about ball rolling time. We need, you know, the goalkeepers need to have loads of goes at it. Yeah, I get that, you do. But sometimes it's nice to trade off that, to have a discussion. It might be before training, it might be after training, but it also might be in between your little drinks breaks as well. How did you feel there? What's your thoughts on that? However your questioning might go. But just allowing them, you know, sometimes they're young kids, they will say things and you'll think, oh, okay, maybe I've not asked the right question. Again, you just have to look at your question and the way you've explained it maybe. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer really. It's just allowing them to express themselves really.
You brought up a really good point right there, which is, and I know this is always the funniest thing to me, is when I'll ask something and like the answer is so out of left field that you're like, wait, are we speaking about the same game right now? I'm very confused on what you're seeing in the picture. Saskia, I'm sure you've been in that position too, and you're like, I don't know what match you were in, but I'm pretty sure like, I think you might have just described what Ter Stegen was just doing. I think this is a very different game that you're looking at right now. But do you have to then go back to your session planning and go like, okay, what did I do wrong here? Because I didn't get the, you know, the answer that I wanted to get back, or the coaching point that I wanted to get out of that. So I kind of want to talk about like the session planning and how important that is. We're really big on session planning here. How important that is to getting the right answers out of your goalkeeper.
Well, but I also think in that, like, I always come back to, like, you have to understand the age group you're working with and what you're working with. Kids are, like, depending on the age, kids are so literal. So you think that you might be explaining something one way and they're taking it in a totally different way. And so it is important to have those conversations and talk with them. I don't necessarily know if it's your session that's wrong. It might be their understanding and your verbiage that might be wrong.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just how they're understanding it. It's not that the session per se itself, what you're trying to teach, isn't wrong. It's just how they're collecting it in their heads.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, you know, you're talking about sometimes 7 and 8 year old boys, you know, and girls, you know, then they don't understand the world and they can't articulate like you understand and articulate. So you have to kind of understand that as well. And yeah, it's understanding the age. You could look at the practice, you know, if they're completely coming at it from a different angle and you're thinking, okay, we're actually trying to shine the light on this topic, and they're
doing crosses.
And they're talking about this topic, you might think, okay, maybe I need to make this clearer. But yeah, on the whole, you know, you just have to allow them to try and express themselves. And I think the big thing is, like you said in the practice I did at the FA that day, just giving them a voice. Just empowering them to have an opinion. And some will be really strong, some will be like, you know, really articulate, and they'll have a lot of knowledge, where it's how do you coax it out of the one who kind of steps back, and how do you empower that boy? And yeah, that's a skill in itself. But I enjoy that. That's the side of coaching I really enjoy, to be honest.
I mean, you're so good at that age group. And one thing I really loved about your session is, and I might steal this, is the ball. Okay, I've got the ball, like you've got the conch, like, you know, so now I can talk, that you can talk. So whoever has the ball gets to talk. Yeah. You know, that's really cool, because I think something tangible, and I don't know where the sports site came into this, Terry, you know, with that, but like, so something, a kid having something tangible that makes them feel more powerful. It makes them feel more like I can actually express myself right now because I have that ball in my hand right now. You know, is that kind of where that came about?
Yeah, for me, that was just a really good way of encouraging maybe the one that takes the back step, that isn't confident speaking in front of the group. It's a way of encouraging that person to speak and have an opinion, rather than, you know, the super confident boy that has got the answers to everything and will jump in and reel off, you know, 4 or 5 different things. So for me, it just works. You have the ball, and you know, nobody can interrupt when that person's got the ball. So it allows them to, sometimes it will actually take them a few seconds, which feels like ages for them to think about it and articulate it, you know, and you have to allow them to do that. If you just get people interrupting, then, you know, it's like any classroom, isn't it? You're going to lose that person if they haven't got a voice. So,
yeah. No, I mean, you know, it's really what I've really like, I've honestly been like feeling teachers right now going through the whole online classes, because we've been doing, we haven't been in the studio since March. We've been doing everything over Zoom since then. And I tell you what, man, I mean, the art of not interrupting and allowing free flow communication is an art in itself. So, I mean, doing it with younger kids, I mean, I can't imagine having 30 kids on a Zoom, like just, you know, I really, you know, congratulations. There you go. Speaking of muting and
it's true. That's what the mute's for. What?
I'm gonna. I was just about to mute Saskia as that came through right there. I want to ask about this because I want to talk about mistakes, and one of the main mistakes that I see, and I've talked to a lot of younger goalkeeper coaches about this, and I've made this same mistake before too, is I already know where my session is going, and I think that the kids are already on the same page as me, and I haven't articulated it well enough, you know, so that they have missed a couple steps, and then all of a sudden the session starts, and I'm like, oh, I need to start all over again. What advice do you give to goalkeeper coaches who get stuck in this situation? Is this a mistake that you see a lot of times, where they either talk too fast or they skip over steps because they assume that the youngers already get what they're going for?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, because I think so many different goalkeeping coaches will work different ways. Like, I've watched so many that will literally be minute to minute. At this minute, we go on to this part. At this minute, we go on to this part, and we go through the gears. So we'll start off with our footwork and our handling, and we'll go on to this and this and this. Where I've been doing it 20 seasons now, so I've kind of developed my own kind of style and the way I do it. So the way I plan a session is I start with the end in mind. I have my topic. I'll have my game-related practice that has to be relative to what they're about to face on a weekend or a midweek game, and kind of say, well, this is what I want to achieve from it. This is my session design. And then I allow it to just go in the direction it needs to go in. So that might be an individual thing. That might be different targets within the session. It might be a little tweak in the size of the dimensions in order to get more or less of something. So the way I plan is probably different to the way a lot of goalkeeping coaches plan. But I started off like that. I would say, right, I do this and then this. But I kind of love the idea of just allowing it to go where it wants to go. And I enjoy that about it. I enjoy that about coaching. And also as well, if you're empowering the players and you give them a bit of ownership and saying, right, the topic is dealing with 1v1s. So this is our practice. This is our setup. You know, like, for instance, the 4-goal game that you saw me deliver at the FA. This is the setup. This is the practice. But go away, have a chat amongst yourselves as a group and see what rules or little things we could add to this in order to get more central 1v1s. Go and have a talk. Like, well, could we do this? Yeah, let's try that. And as long as it's related to a game and it's realistic, let's try that. Let's see how that works. Everybody's different, but I enjoy that side of coaching. Yeah. Where I'm not sure, I don't want to be like, boom, boom, this minute we're doing this. Too structured for me. I don't work that way.
No, I agree with you 100% on that, because I feel that you'll find, like, it's fine to have an outline and like a plan, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But you'll find that you might have to tweak what's going on. Like, maybe you're seeing like something wrong in, like, that you need to address. So you might have to flip or add another drill in there to kind of like, or take a step back and say, okay, you know, they're not handling this through ball properly. I kind of assumed that they had it down. They're not. So we're going to take a step back. We're going to kind of do another drill to kind of get their timing right, to understand what they're doing wrong. Then we can move on to the drill that we were just doing. And so to be able to kind of free flow like that, and sometimes I don't get to the end of my concept of my what I have down for practice. Like, I don't get through the whole thing. I try, but sometimes I don't, because that happens, because you have to swap it up.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really, really good point. And in regards to the free flowing, we had Matt Doyle on from Birmingham City a few days ago. And, one of the aspects that we were discussing with him was the gamification aspect is, try to create competitive games, trying to make it obviously some sort of incentive for the players as they're playing. I noticed in that 4-goal game, there was a lot of gamification going on in that activity, especially at the youngers. Terry, is that extremely important?
Yeah, they enjoy it, don't they? I mean, you think back to when you were a kid, you just love competitive games, don't you? You love winning, you love that extra. It's amazing when you add like a scoring system, you just tend to get that extra little, especially the younger, you tend to get that extra little bit out of them, I feel, and they enjoy it more. But saying that, you could also do that with the pros, and they love it as well, because pros are just big kids, really, aren't they? There's no difference. They love it. They love a scoring system, and when I'll do sessions with England and I'll set up little games, right? Who's going to be the top scorer in today's session? And it's, it's a bit of a joke and a bit tongue in cheek, but they love it. They, every keeper loves scoring goals. So, you have to just kind of, add those bits in and allow for that. And it seems to work. So.
What I love is like how engaged you got in the games. And I think that's so important, especially as a youngers coach, to stay as engaged in the session as possible, because if you're connected to that session, they're going to be connected to that session. If you're passive in the session, then they might start losing focus or whatever. And I absolutely love that energy that you have right there. And I think that's another thing too, so we want to discuss, is that there's a difference between having energy, and being loud and intense. Energy doesn't necessarily mean, spastic, right?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to the skill of the coach. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to back off. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to talk to the individual. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to create an energy in the group with the rules or the scoring system or your voice sometimes. So I think sensing what the group needs, not just saying this is how I coach, but having the ability to go in and say, well, actually, I feel the group needs this today, or I feel the group needs this. But at the same time, if you're always the one that goes in and sets the tempo with your demeanor and your voice, how do they set their own tempo, and how do they set their own speed of a session, for instance? So again, it's not just one way, another way, I think. And also individually as well. You talk about, like Saskia was saying there, about through balls. It might be that one of the keepers has got it, but one hasn't. So how do you adapt the session for the one that hasn't, but then advance it for the one that has? And that's why I love just having a rough outline of where I'm going with the session, a rough idea, but then allowing for the technical and the tactical, but also the social as well. Because sometimes they do need to be told, hey, come on, this isn't the level that I expect from you. Sometimes you need to, back off and allow them to, it's a constantly changing thing throughout a session, throughout season.
Absolutely.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you brought up a really good point in regards to, I don't want anyone to think it, and Matt brought up this thing as well too. Doyle, he's like, it's not all party hats. Like you have to understand that there's a give and take, and then you have to understand when you need to step in, and if the level's not what you want, and then also if things are going. I think one of the biggest issues that I see a lot of times with younger goalkeeper coaches, and I don't know how you guys both feel, is that they feel like they have to find something to coach. But if everything's working, if the session is working and the kids are enjoying it, and they're growing from it, you don't need to step in. You don't need to stop it. You don't need to showcase to every other coach at the pitch that you're coaching right now. And I think there's a lot of that goes on, quote unquote, showcasing coaching rather than actually being a coach. If that makes any sense to either of you.
Yeah, it does make perfect sense. And I think in order to do that, you have to have the trust of, say, the academy manager. So like, I'll give you an example. Last season, I did an under-18 game. I said to the under-18 goalkeeper, you take the warm-up today, you know what you're doing. So he took himself, the number 2 and the number 3, And I stood there and I said, if you need me, give me a shout. And I watched it, and he did it all, and he set it up, and it was great. Now, if the academy manager had looked over and he didn't have a relationship with me, I'd say, what's the goalkeeping coach doing? He's just stood there watching the warm up. So, yeah, you have to have that relationship with the people you're working with. But at the same time, like, I see it on match days a lot. So on a Saturday or a Sunday, the goalkeeping coach goes and speaks to the goalkeeper after every period. But what if there's nothing to say? Just, what do you, like, the amount of times that I would just say, no, there's nothing for me to say. But
no,
you feel like
that.
you said, you have to go over and, yeah, well done, a little pat on the back. You don't need to do
no,
that.
I do that. I do that. Like when we'll do stuff with UCLA, like this spring, like, you know, they'll bring the teams in, like if it's small side or something, the coaches will take their teams in and stuff that are playing. And I'm just like, all right, go get a drink. Like sometimes there's nothing to say, you know, like, and I don't want to feel under pressure because the other coaches are talking to their field players and their teams. I'm just like, you're good. You know, like, I'll let you know.
You know, I think you need to be confident in yourself in order to do that as well, because you will get people look at that and think, what's happening there?
Like she doesn't care, or she's not invested.
Yeah, exactly. It's the way it's perceived a lot of the time. But I think you've just got to do the right thing. And if the right thing is saying nothing, then the right thing's saying nothing.
Yeah, because sometimes like there could be like the dumbest, most outlandish, like let's say we're talking small-sided, like there could be the dumbest, most outlandish mistake that'll never happen again in the history of soccer. I don't need to bring you in and talk about it during your water break. Like, you know, it's like, all right, yeah, we get it. You know, you get it. Yeah. Like, stuff happens. Go get some water. And like, but I think sometimes field player coaches and stuff be like, you know, you know, oh my God, you haven't talked to them about. I'm like, what am I supposed to talk to them about? The ball hit like off that person's head, that post, that head, that knee, and then went in the goal. Like I you know, we don't train that. Sorry. You know what I mean? But yeah, sometimes you got to chill out, and other times there are things to talk about, but don't feel under pressure to do it from outside things. Don't feel like, oh, you know, I need to be coaching right now. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah, sometimes the best coaching is just say nothing.
Yeah. You know, so that's it, guys. So everybody out there who's tuned in for this live stream right here, who's listening to the podcast right now, all goalkeeper coaching is standing there and doing nothing. Don't do anything. Just stand there. Terry's gotten to the place that he's at. It's 20 years of just standing there and saying nothing.
Yeah.
People are taking notes right now. They're like, just don't do anything. Don't do anything. They're going to go back to their DOCs and be like, well, they said don't do anything, so I'm not going to do anything. I want to talk about a real hot topic, at least here in the United States, in regards to the younger age groups, and that's dealing with flighted balls and back to the bar scenarios. Because there's a big push in the United States, at least, to not introduce flighted balls or back to the bar work until they get into the full-size game. And their reasoning for that is that they're going to develop bad habits based on the wrong dimensions, the sizes, the coordination level. I don't know how it is in the FA over there, but there's no heading up until about 11 years of age here in the United States. What are your thoughts on that? And should you introduce that type of movement?
Yeah, I think if your session design is realistic, then situations like that will naturally come up anyway when you're defending the goal or you're defending the area, and you have to be skilled enough to move your feet and work your feet in order to come up with a solution for that. I wouldn't overthink that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would just say if it happens, it happens. Do your best to deal with it. It will get easier as you get quicker and get stronger and bigger and whatever else. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't overthink that situation.
But do you work on the?
No, you absolutely do. I think it's dumb. I don't want to call somebody dumb. I'm just looking for a better word for that. You train a goalkeeper to be a goalkeeper. You don't say, hey, not until you're 11 years old or you're in the big goal or whatever, you do not, or, you know, you don't have to learn flighted balls or the correct movement or positioning until you hit a certain age. That's ridiculous. It's like kids came up to me and they have to work on their distribution. They're working on their like side volleys and stuff. They're like, we're not allowed to punt yet. I go, so great. So you want to wait until you're allowed to punt and then you can't? You know what I mean? Like, it's a dumb concept. It's like, oh, well, they're not allowed to punt, so don't teach them how to punt. Well, that's dumb. Like,
But I can't tell you how many 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds have come up to me though before, and they've literally said this. They're like, balls don't come to me like this in the games. They said, or like they're like, yeah, but nobody can use their head, so why should I go up there with my hands or whatever? You know, like because kids are smart and they are logical, and they as Matt Doyle was trying to say is like they try to beat the game. They're not trying to think of like how to develop and become a proper goalkeeper. They're thinking about how do I beat the game? So how do we instill those good habits in them and yet still not push down their, because you want a goalkeeper that's smart and thinks things through like that.
No, that's overanalyzing. Tell the kid to shut up and do the drill.
Oh, now you're waking up.
It's 9 o'clock. Just kidding. My parents are like, God, I'm so glad she doesn't push my kids.
No. I mean, Terry, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you deal? Like, let's use that example right there. I've had that happen with a kid. You know, oh well, they can't use their head, so why should I go out with my hands like that for that ball? You know?
Yeah, my answer to that would be quite simple. That we're preparing you to be effective in the pro game in 8-9 years time. You've got to be in the first team. We're preparing you and getting you ready for that now. The thought of, like you said, not introducing the sidewinder because you're not allowed to use it. Well then, so you introduce it as a 13-year-old and it takes them 3 years to become effective. So you've just got to just play the game and whatever. You know, I do understand the heading thing. I mean, you don't want a 9-year-old heading 30 balls in a session. That's just silly. There are rules coming in England, I think this coming season, about the amount of headers you can do below the age of, I think, 18 or whatever. And I think that's really sensible from a goalkeeping point of view. You can't be too prescriptive with the way you design things because the game is there's so many different scenarios.
I mean, you don't know. It might come up, period, even before you're legally allowed to do it. It's part of regular goalkeeper training.
And I think that's really, really the key there to both of you right there is that, and I try to stress this to people as much as possible, is that the more scenarios you can put a young goalkeeper under, the better equipped they're going to be in the game. And I think that the number one thing I always try to instill into every goalkeeper is that mindset of like, this is really happening. This is a match. This is not an activity. This is not a drill. This is a match. And these are scenarios you come into. So let's do what you would do in a game. And again, in that same case, like I'm fine with improvisation, you know, if it works, it works. I'm actually, whoa, that's awesome. I can't believe you figured out how to make that work. You know, you got stuck in a weird situation. You did this Cruyff turn and you ended up escaping. Like, I'm not going to berate you on it because you made it work. And I want you to have that type of freedom to be able to do those things. Now, if it doesn't work out, then we can have a discussion about it. What about set pieces, Terry? Because this is a difficult thing for a lot of younger coaches when they're working on set pieces, because it's a lot of starting and stopping. It's a lot of starting and stopping, and it's hard to keep their focus. Do you do it? How much responsibility do you give the goalkeeper in setting up walls, all those sorts of things at the youngers?
Yeah, so at the FA, it's made clear to them, even from a very young age, that if they're going to be successful in the pathway, then set pieces are going to play a huge part in that. So as soon as they come in, I think the under-15s is slightly different, because the under-15s at the FA is very much like a talent ID year. So you're seeing as many different players as you can, as many different goalkeepers as you can, exposing the goalkeepers to international experiences. And then as they start to come towards the end of the under-15 season, you start to mould more of a team ready for the under-16s. But when they're in the under-16s, it is made very clear that set plays are going to play a huge part in being successful as an young England player, and you have a responsibility to make sure that you're giving that your full focus. And then I think it's the skill of the head coach, the skill of the goalkeeping coach, whoever's responsible for delivering the practice, to make sure it's not right. We're all stood around and you've got your sliders on, your flip-flops on, and you don't want to create that environment. You want to try and make it competitive, make it attackers against defenders, defenders against attackers. And again, that comes down to the skill of the coach in order to engage the players. But there is a huge responsibility, and actually rightly so, because if you look at the stats, you know, the England teams over the last few years have been very successful, and set plays have played a huge part in that. So they need to be worked on. In terms of in regards to empowering the young players, yeah, again, you want their voice, you want their opinion. What's your thoughts on this? Why have you got 3 men in the wall there? Why have you even got a wall there? Come on, let's have this debate. And I think, you know, the type of players that we want to recruit are players that are, you know, have an opinion and have that self-confidence to say, well, actually, you know, and I love it when a goalkeeper disagrees with me. I'm like, come on, let's have a discussion now. You know, why do you think that? Oh, okay, interesting. What? And I love that. So set plays can be great for that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point. And Saskia and I, we've had this conversation in regards to, you don't want it to feel like a lecture. You want it still to feel like an activity. And she's a big proponent on making sure that there's some sort of obstructions, there's some sort of, you know, challenge in the service. So it's not just you're not just training in isolation. I can't tell you how many times I've seen set piece sessions where there is no pressure at all. It's just, you know, mannequins in a wall and a goalkeeper. But that's not realistic to the game, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be realistic, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still waking up, and it's been an hour, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm trying to get it going here. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about mannequins versus regular players. You know, Saskia's a big proponent on using actual live play.
I'm a big proponent of a lot of things.
I know.
Love that word.
No, but it sounds fancy.
Hey, look, no. I if you have the manpower, some goalkeeper coaches don't. Like I am a big proponent of live play, of moving people, of having runs into the box, of like we always say, as much of a game situation as possible. You know, a big giant mannequin that's the size of Shaq, just stagnant right there. It's, you know, unrealistic. It's an option if you don't have other options. But if you have options, utilize real life players.
Terry, how often do you guys utilize mannequins? And do you have like mini mannequins, like little mini-me's that are the size of the kids?
Yeah, I mean, the FA, they have, like you said, the ones that are the size of Shaq. I mean, they're about 7 foot tall. To be fair, they're inflatable. So when you run into them, not personally, but when the keepers run into them, it's all right. But the worst ones are the solid plastic ones. I mean, it's so painful for the keepers when they run into them. But yeah, exactly what you said there, really. You want to make it as realistic as possible. So if you've got the bodies, then use them. Why use a mannequin when, you know, it makes me laugh when I watch a session or a practice and you've got the goalkeeper in goal, you've got a goalkeeper that's maybe had his go and he's at the side of the goal, but you've got a mannequin. Well, hold on a minute. Take the mannequin out and say to the guy that's had his turn, right, you then become the mannequin. You become that body, that person. So utilize the players you've got. I just think you've got to think about it a little bit more rather than just going, okay, I'm going to stick in 5 mannequins that don't move. You know, it's just, I just think you just got to think it through a little bit more. But if you've got the players, use them for sure. Yeah. You don't play against mannequins, do you?
No. That'd be nice, though. I tell you what.
But think about it. Think about like the mannequin. Okay, so the ball comes up. It hits the mannequin. It hits. You'll call him Shaq. It hits Shaq. There's nobody plays the rebound but the keeper. Like where's the rebound? Where's the pressure on the drop ball if you're doing a cross and the keeper doesn't handle it? Like, okay, dropped. Where's the consequence from it? They just go and pick it up, as opposed to a live person saying, "Hey, you know, there's a rebound. If there's a drop ball, finish it." That sets a whole different set of mentality. That means you really have to get to that rebound. Don't drop the ball, you know, as opposed to, okay, well, the mannequin's not going to kick me. So
No, that you brought up a really good point. And I can't tell you how many times I've had young goalkeepers, especially, give up on the play because they're like, "Well, there it is. There, you know, that's unfortunate." And then it's like, I'm like, "No, in a real game, what would you do? The ball's still live. Like, what are you going to do? Like, it's still a second ball. Like, you know."
But it's that mentality. They get caught up in the mistake they made. Let's say we're working on crossing or something, and get caught up, or free kicks or whatever, and they come up and they don't hold on to the ball. and then their mind is set on the fact they didn't hold on to the ball instead of playing through with the situation.
Yeah.
But if it's a mannequin in front of them, like you said, they're just going to go and pick it up. And that's not going to happen in the game. There's going to be a part 2, a part 3. So if you can put a body in there and then you say, look, if the ball comes in the box, play to a finish. It might then be that it drops to the player's feet. The goalkeeper's got a decision to make. He might have to hang back to buy himself reaction time. He might go and have to spread or block or go and intercept.
Yeah.
Again, it's just make it as realistic as possible to a game. So listen, you can use mannequins, but if you've got people, use them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, coaches out there I get it. Sometimes there's just you and a goalkeeper and you don't have that. And the only thing you do have are mannequins. So use what you can to put in that obstruction. But when you have the chance, use whether it's other goalkeepers, if you have 3 goalkeepers in training or whatever it is.
Speaking of that, and Terry, how are you doing on time? Are you doing? You're
I'm
right
fine.
on time right now?
Yeah, I've got,
okay.
Another 10, 15
Okay. Okay, cool. So I want to talk about service because, one of the things that I see as a big mistake at the younger ages, and Saskia and I, we discuss this all the time, is the lack of service being done by the youngers because the goalkeeper coach is so afraid of their session looking, quote unquote, messy or not getting the right service. So they do all the service, not empowering the goalkeeper in any way whatsoever.
Okay. I will say this. It depends on I didn't mean to interrupt, but it depends on the age group it is. I have woken up, I guess. That sometimes you do need to do, like, depending on your situation, like I said, with UCLA, I don't serve the ball. Like, I have players that are, like, rehabbing or whatever, like an extra, or the goalkeepers or whatever, they'll serve the ball. They need to utilize it. But when you're dealing with an 8-year-old and you're trying to do something and get something done, sometimes you do have to serve. Like, in my opinion. Like, obviously you want to teach them proper services and stuff, but in order to get an efficient session in, sometimes you got to do serving.
But it's interesting because I always say to the keepers, look, you're not just there to serve, you're working on your kicking.
Oh, absolutely.
So it can develop, the boy that's serving is actually developing his driven pass, if you like.
Right.
So ideally, you don't really want to be serving, in my opinion. But like you said, for the purpose of the practice, you might have to in order to create what you need to create to hit that certain topic. But in an ideal world, like you saw that FA session, I'm stood there on the corner, they're all serving each other. The standard's fine, they're being tested. So whenever you can, it's different. A 1-to-1 session obviously is impossible not to serve. But when you've got a group, I stay away from it, but sometimes you do need to. But if you do then serve, make it a realistic service to what they might get in the game, rather than, a volley or a half volley. And again, I'm quite opinionated on that, but I think there is a time and a place for it. But you watch a 2-hour session and all the goalkeeping coach ever does is hit half volleys. So they'll get very, very good at saving half volleys, but their brain isn't going to be picking up realistic triggers, that's for sure.
There's nothing better than when you're watching a goalkeeper warm up and you're like, oh, that guy's got to be the number one. And then you see him go in the game and you're like, ooh, that guy, he's not. That guy knows how to train. That guy knows how to that guy knows how to handle service and go through cones. But he does not know how to play in the actual game. Exactly, which is the number one thing. Because the thing is that I'm glad you brought up about the demands of the actual, make it realistic to what they're facing. I think one of the problems and one of the reasons why I've started to let them even do bad service, because that's what they're going to face in the game. It's not going to be clean service. An 8-year-old, a 9-year-old is not going to be giving them clean service like an adult. So I mean, personally, when I do service, I'm trying to replicate what an 8 or 9-year-old is going to do in that. And by that, I mean, I don't mean to shank the ball and sort of stuff like that, but the pace of the ball and, the movement of the ball and that sort of thing. I don't know a lot of 8 or 9-year-olds that are going to be hitting knuckles, that are going to be moving and all that sort of thing. So I don't know how you feel about that, Terry. So.
Well, my opinion on it is quite clear. It's the goal. So have you read the book Bounce?
No.
So there's a book called Bounce, and it's Matthew Syed, and he did it's the 10,000 hours theory. I know that's been disproven and things like that, but he said that as a part of the book, that he said that Roger Federer makes his decision on what shot he's going to play before the ball's left the opponent's racket. So if you think about that from a goalkeeping point of view, you've got to make sure the triggers, before the ball's even hit, the triggers are realistic triggers. So if I'm hitting a half volley at an 8-year-old keeper, they're going to get really good at saving catches, catching the ball from half volleys from a fully grown man. What they're not going to get used to is realistic triggers from an 8 or a 9-year-old player. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to game realistic practice, but game realistic service. Because if you actually studied when the keeper makes his decision on what action he's going to do, it's probably, if the ball's close in and inside the 18-yard box, it's probably before the ball's even left the striker's foot. And it's a really big thing I've been trying to work on this year, is working on with the keepers on anticipating, not over anticipating, but anticipating what's about to happen based on what's happening in front of them, whether it's the service or the scenario that's happening. And you can only really work on that if it's what you're creating is realistic.
Yeah, I see that. I think I see that a lot in flank service. I find, like, if I'm out, which I don't hit flank services, but if I were out there hitting a flank service, an adult on a younger goalkeeper, where my ball's landing and the type of ball I'm serving in is going to be so different than their age group. And their age group, the ball dies short, or, you know, they're all over the place. And they need to react to that situation, not me putting in perfect balls that aren't totally unrealistic. And that's where I see that a lot, a big mistake with that a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and you know, and I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of goalkeeper coaches. They want to have control of their session. They're so worried about making sure.
Like, I just want to meet these goalkeeper coaches that are so worried about their pretty little sessions.
Have you? I mean, again, I'm not gonna name names, but I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm talking about myself the last 20 years, guys. I'm talking about myself the last 20 years as in the goalkeeper coaches. No, I think that I think it's an insecurity thing. And I'll be honest, like when I was starting out as a goalkeeper coach, I was very insecure. I was worried about what people thought of my session, and I thought that it had to look good, and I thought that I had to showcase that I was a good goalkeeper coach, and by that meant that I had to control the session.
No, I get it.
And you know, and I think that we need to be comfortable with that chaos, that messiness, like Matt Doyle was talking about a couple days ago. Last thing before we get going, Terry, what advice do you give to like a young goalkeeper that's moving into a new environment? I don't know, you know, how the movement is out there in regards to, you know, goalkeepers moving club to club and different coaches to coaches. But in the United States, it's very prevalent for goalkeepers to move from club to club to new environments, whether they move to a new city, you know, to a new club, a new school, all that sort of thing. And we were talking about it earlier off the air, you know, what if the environment is completely different than what you were dealing with at your past club? You know, a lot of parents come up to me and they go, well, this is very different than what it was like at his other club, or he liked it before more, or at the other place or whatever. So is there any advice that you would give? Any like kind of little nuggets of wisdom?
Yeah, so I always say to the keepers, look, you know, I've got a way of coaching, a way of delivering. I've got opinions on the way I've like to develop young goalkeepers. But it's ultimately up to the goalkeeper and what works for them. So they might work with, across their career, 20 goalkeeping coaches. They might, by the age of 15 years old, already work with 5 or 6 goalkeeping coaches. When they come away with the FA, they're working with me. They go back to their club, they're working with someone else. So I always try and say to them, look, take what you can from different coaches. See what works for you ultimately. So you might take a little bit from him, a bit from me, a bit from here, and you're going to be unique and you're going to be different to everybody else. So just do what works for you. And if it works for you, I'm not going to say, no, I want you to change this. You need to change this. If it's working, great. If it's not working, I might suggest something and have an idea on how they can try something different. But my advice would be, just take what you can from different people, because you're going to have a lot of different contacts throughout your career. and see what works for you.
Yeah. Saskia, anything you want to add to that?
No, I agree. I mean, it's that black and white. It's that gray area. You know, each keeper is going to be different, and they have to find what works for them, perfect it, and it's going to come from multiple coaches, multiple different experiences. That's how you become. It's no one way is the highway. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a real good point to end on out there for all the young goalkeepers or parents that are listening to this right now, is that, don't get caught in the cult of this is the only way to do things, and be open-minded. You might disagree with something, but give something a shot, because you never know. You might find something you like.
Things are going to evolve as well. Because 20 years ago, like you pointed out, playing in the 90s was very different. That's how you bring it around. No, it's okay. I'm totally okay with it.
No. I know. I was like, when Terry started saying that, I was like, oh, that's a good thing, Saskia. It's only 8:30 in the morning right now. No.
All right, I'm fine with it. I have the World Cup medal, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Show that. That's it.
Although we had Karen Bardsley on last week, you guys on the women's side are coming along quite well, Terry, too. So there's a lot of competition now in that game. Well, awesome, man. Well, Terry, honestly, thank you for taking, close to an hour and a half of your time right now.
No worries.
We only go that long for special people.
We really only do. And Saskia, I don't know if you've noticed it, but anytime the FA recommends somebody, we always go a good amount of time. So you guys are fantastic.
No,
honestly,
absolutely.
We really appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to give back like this to us, us country bumpkins here in the United States, who are just learning the game of football.
I knew I couldn't get out of this episode without an accent. An effort at an accent.
Yeah, we're not gonna try to do that. We're not gonna try to do that again. If anybody out there wants to reach out to you, maybe they're working with youngers, maybe they're having some frustrations. They want to know some more about session planning. I know the FA is doing a lot of online learning right now. Where's the best place for people to reach out to you and personally check out all the content the FA is doing?
So the FA, I've got a website called the Boot Room, and on the Boot Room there's some really good goalkeeping bits on there. I'm not sure exactly what the website is, but if you just Google Boot Room, the FA, you'll be able to find some stuff on there. That's where my session that you've watched is on there. Personally, I'm on Twitter, TM Goalkeeping. So yeah, reach out to me. If you've got any questions at all, I'm more than happy to help you and answer the best I can. So yeah, there's some great resources out there. The FA are doing loads of stuff on their YouTube channel as well at the moment, which is a really good resource.
Are you guys doing online classes right now or no?
Yeah, I think not personally, but Tim and the rest of the full-time staff are releasing a lot of stuff, and it's all through the YouTube channel. So yeah, there's some great stuff on there, and yeah, I think you guys will find it really helpful, and it's hopefully you'll benefit from that.
So. Awesome, guys. Well, again, guys, you can reach out to Saskia Webber, both on Instagram and Twitter now at Saskia_Webber. Reach out to us. Coffee time. If you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, shout out to everybody that said we need to do an episode on youngers. We reached out, Terry, just to give you a little heads up. We reached out to Tim Dittmer and we said, hey, we want to do an episode on youngers. Do you have anybody in mind? And he immediately said you. And he said, so he was, such a, again, we can't thank you enough. And after watching your session, I was like, oh, now I see why Tim recommended Terry for this episode. So contact at, of course, contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18media.com with a guest suggestion or topic suggestion, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. That's all the time on Inside the 18 today, guys. And we are out to go get breakfast later.